Captain Jake Morrison walked through the halls of the New Horizon, his diplomatic ship heading toward the biggest space station in the galaxy. His crew moved quietly around him, checking systems and preparing for what they all hoped would be a peaceful meeting. Jake had been doing this job for 15 years, and he still believed that talking was better than fighting. Dr. Lisa Patterson sat in her lab, reading reports about the alien species they would meet today. She had spent her whole life studying different aliens, trying to understand how they thought and what they wanted. Lisa believed that all species could get along if they just tried hard enough. She had written books about it. She had given speeches about it. She truly believed it was possible. Commander Rick Sullivan checked the ship's weapons for the third time that morning. He did this before every diplomatic mission, even though they never expected to use them. Rick had been a soldier before he became a diplomat's bodyguard. He knew what weapons could do, and he knew that sometimes talking was not enough. But he followed orders, and his orders were always to keep the peace. The New Horizon docked at Zentara Prime, the massive space station where the Galactic Council met. Jake looked out the window at the huge structure. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Ships from dozens of different species flew around it like insects around a bright light. Each species thought they were important. Each species thought they belonged there. Humans had been coming to these meetings for 300 years. 300 years of asking politely for the same things over and over again. 300 years of being told to wait, to be patient, to prove themselves worthy. Jake's grandfather had made these same trips. His father had made these same trips. Now Jake was making them, and he wondered if his children would make them too. The council chamber was enormous. Hundreds of aliens sat in curved rows looking down at the center where speakers stood. The humans had 3 seats near the back. They were small seats, smaller than the ones given to species that had joined the council after humanity. Jake had always noticed this, but he had never complained. Complaining would not help. Jake walked to the speaking area in the center of the chamber. The lights were bright, and he could feel thousands of alien eyes watching him. He had given this same speech many times before, asking for the same things his father and grandfather had asked for. Fair trade agreements, equal representation in council votes, the right to govern their own colonies without alien oversight. The Veltar ambassador stood up before Jake could finish speaking. The Veltar looked like giant insects with too many arms and cold black eyes. Their ambassador's voice was like metal scraping against stone when he spoke. The human speaks of equality, the Veltar ambassador said, but humans are still learning to walk among the stars. They are primitive mammals who barely understand the technology they use. How can they expect to be treated as equals when they are clearly inferior in every way that matters? Laughter filled the chamber. Not all species laughed, but enough did to make the sound echo off the walls. Jake felt his face get hot, but he kept his expression calm. He had heard worse things said about humans before. He would probably hear worse things again. The Zephyrian delegate stood up next. Zephyrians looked like tall, thin people with blue skin and silver hair, but their eyes were completely white with no pupils. They thought this made them look wise and mysterious. Jake thought it just made them look blind. Perhaps, the Zephyrian said in a voice like singing, we should consider redistributing human colonies to more capable species. Humans have proven they cannot manage their worlds effectively. Other species could do better with those resources. More laughter. Louder this time. Jake's hands formed fists at his sides, but he kept them there. Lisa, watching from the human section, looked like someone had hit her. Rick's face showed no emotion at all, but his hand moved closer to his weapon. Then Counselor Thrix stood up. Thrix belonged to the Dominion, the most powerful species in the council. Dominion members looked almost human, except they were bigger, stronger, and had strange markings on their skin that glowed when they got excited. The markings on Thrix's face were glowing bright red now. I have a proposal, Thrix announced, his voice booming through the chamber. Humans should be classified as a protected species, like the gentle ones of Kepler-7 or the simple folk of the Outer Rim. They need guidance. They need protection from themselves and from others who might take advantage of their limitations. The chamber exploded with noise. Aliens cheered and clapped and made whatever sounds their species made when they were happy. Protected species status meant humanity would lose the right to govern themselves. It meant alien guardians would make all important decisions for them. It meant humans would become pets of the galaxy. Jake stood in the center of it all, listening to aliens celebrate the idea of taking away everything humans had worked for. 300 years of patience. 300 years of proving themselves over and over again. 300 years of being the bigger person, of turning the other cheek, of believing that good behavior would eventually be rewarded. He thought about his grandfather's stories of the early days, when humans first reached the stars and found they were not alone. His grandfather had been a soldier then, fighting in the last of the human wars before they decided to pursue peace instead. He had told Jake stories about what humans could do when they stopped being nice and started being dangerous. Jake reached for the secure communication device on his belt. His fingers found the emergency transmission button that had never been used in 300 years of human diplomacy, the button that would send a message directly to Earth, bypassing all normal channels and protocols. The laughter in the chamber was getting louder. Aliens were now openly discussing how to divide up human territory and resources. They talked about humans like they were not even there, like they were objects to be managed rather than people with their own thoughts and feelings and rights. Jake pressed the button. The message was short and simple, coded in a way that only the highest levels of human government would understand, but its meaning was clear to anyone who received it. The age of human patience was over. The age of human tolerance had reached its end. For the first time in 300 years, humanity was about to remind the galaxy what they were truly capable of when they stopped choosing to be nice. The message reached Earth in less than 6 hours. It arrived at the White House while President Helen Carter was having breakfast with her family, trying to enjoy a quiet morning before another day of running the most powerful human government in the galaxy. Her secure phone buzzed once, then again, then began making a sound it had never made before. Helen looked at the message and felt her blood turn cold. 4 words that changed everything. Tolerance protocols are terminated. She had been president for 8 years, and she had hoped she would never see those words. Every human leader for the past 3 centuries had hoped the same thing. Within 20 minutes, the Oval Office was full of people who had been sleeping or eating or spending time with their families just moments before. Secretary of Defense Marcus Cole arrived still wearing his jogging clothes. CIA Director Amy Bennett came straight from her daughter's birthday party, still carrying a piece of cake. These were the people who knew about Contingency Omega, the plan that existed in the deepest, most classified files of human government. "Are we sure about this?" Helen asked, looking around the room at faces she had known for years. "Are we absolutely sure there is no other way?" General Frank Lewis, the oldest person in the room, spoke first. He had been a young soldier when Contingency Omega was first created, back when humans still remembered what war really meant. "Madam President, we have tried diplomacy for 300 years. We have been patient. We have been reasonable. We have been everything they asked us to be, and they still treat us like children who need adult supervision." Amy Bennett opened her tablet and began reading from files that officially did not exist. "Our people throughout the galaxy have been sending reports for decades. The aliens do not respect us. They never have. They see our peaceful nature as weakness, our diplomacy as surrender. Today they proposed making us a protected species. Tomorrow they will take our colonies. Next year they will take our freedom." Marcus Cole activated the emergency communication system that connected Earth to every human world, every human station, every human ship in the galaxy. His voice was steady, but everyone in the room could hear the weight of history in his words. "All units, this is Defense Command. Contingency Omega is now active. Repeat, Contingency Omega is now active. Acknowledge receipt and begin Phase 1 operations immediately." The responses came back within minutes from across human space. Ships that had been pretending to be cargo vessels suddenly revealed weapon systems that should not have existed. Space stations that looked like peaceful research facilities activated defensive systems that no alien government knew about. Soldiers who had been living as civilians on alien worlds received messages telling them to remember who they really were. On Mars, Admiral Pete Johnson had been waiting for this day for his entire career. The Shadow Fleet had been his responsibility for 20 years. 1,000 warships that did not appear on any official records, built in secret shipyards hidden in asteroid fields and powered by technology that humanity had developed while pretending to struggle with basic alien science. Pete walked through the command center of his flagship, the Retribution, and looked out at ships that filled the space around Mars like a metal forest. Each ship was crewed by volunteers who had given up normal lives to prepare for a war they hoped would never come. They had families they could not talk about their work with. They had friends who thought they had boring jobs in asteroid mining or deep space exploration. "All ships, this is Admiral Johnson," Pete said into his communication system. "Today we stop pretending to be weak. Today we show the galaxy what humans can really do. Prepare for immediate departure to assigned targets." Back on Earth, Dr. Kelly Wright was activating research facilities that alien scientists thought were simple agricultural stations or mining operations. For decades, human researchers had been working on projects that would have amazed and terrified the aliens, who looked down on human science. Faster-than-light communication that did not require the relay stations aliens used. Energy weapons that could punch through any known shield technology. And most secretly of all, weapons that could destroy entire star systems if humanity was pushed too far. In his office at the Pentagon, Colonel Danny Baker was sending activation codes to human agents throughout the galaxy. These were people who had spent years, sometimes decades, living among aliens and pretending to be simple traders, maintenance workers, cultural exchange students, or diplomatic staff. They had learned alien languages, alien customs, and most importantly, alien weaknesses. The activation codes were simple and looked like routine business messages to anyone who intercepted them. "The new shipment of Earth coffee will arrive ahead of schedule. Your sister sends her love and hopes. You are staying warm. The concert tickets you ordered are now available for pickup." But to the people who received them, these messages meant the same thing. Stop pretending to be harmless and remember what you were trained to do. Captain Maria Santos received her message while having dinner with a Zephyrian family who thought she was a cultural exchange researcher, studying their music. She smiled and complimented their meal while mentally calculating how long it would take her to disable the planetary defense grid she had been secretly mapping for 3 years. Commander. Steve Harris got his message while fixing the air conditioning system in a Veltar military base. The Veltar officers who worked around him every day had no idea that the friendly human maintenance worker could kill them all with his bare hands if he needed to. They definitely did not know that he had been placing listening devices and small, explosive charges throughout their impregnable fortress for the past 5 years. Lieutenant Nancy Davis was attending a scientific conference on alien archaeology. When her message arrived, the alien scientists at the conference respected her work and enjoyed her presentations about human theories on ancient civilizations. They had no idea that she was actually gathering intelligence about alien homeworlds and looking for weaknesses in their planetary defenses. Within hours of the first message from Zentara Prime, the balance of power in the galaxy began to shift. Ships moved toward targets they had been studying for years. Agents activated equipment they had kept hidden for decades. Weapons that aliens thought were impossible began charging up in secret facilities across human space. President Carter stood at the window of the Oval Office, looking out at the city where millions of humans lived and worked and raised their families, most of them completely unaware that their species was about to change the course of galactic history. "God help us all," she whispered, then turned back to her advisors. "Send the message to our diplomatic missions. Tell them to get our people out of alien space immediately, and send a warning to the Galactic Council. Tell them they have 48 hours to reconsider their decision about humanity's status." "And if they refuse?" Marcus asked. Helen looked at him with eyes that had seen too much history. "Then we remind them why our ancestors conquered an entire planet before we ever reached the stars." The first strike came exactly 72 hours after Jake Morrison pressed that emergency button. Commander Steve Harris had been working in the Veltar Military Command Center on Kepler Prime for 5 years, fixing their computers and cleaning their floors and listening to every word they said. The Veltar officers treated him like furniture, talking about secret military plans right in front of him, because they thought humans were too stupid to understand. Steve had been mapping the base since his first day there. He knew where every weapon was stored, where every important computer was located, and most importantly, where every Veltar officer would be at any given time of day. He had been patient, friendly, and helpful for 5 long years. Now it was time to stop being nice. At exactly 0600 local time, Steve walked into the main command center carrying his usual cleaning supplies. The night shift officers barely looked at him. He was just the human janitor, invisible and harmless. Steve smiled and nodded at them like he did every morning, then quietly placed small devices behind computer terminals while he pretended to dust them. The devices were no bigger than coins, but they contained enough explosive power to destroy the most advanced computer systems in Veltar space. Steve had been carrying them in his cleaning cart for months, waiting for this day. The Veltar had never bothered to search his equipment because who would suspect a janitor of being a saboteur? At 0612, Steve pressed a button on his communication device. The small explosives went off simultaneously throughout the base, destroying communication systems, weapon controls, and defensive shields in the span of 3 seconds. Emergency alarms began screaming, but there was no one left to coordinate a response. While the Veltar officers ran around in confusion, Steve opened a hidden compartment in his cart and pulled out weapons that should not have existed. Human military technology had advanced far beyond what any alien species knew, and Steve's equipment could punch through Veltar armor like it was made of paper. The battle for the most secure military base in Veltar space lasted 14 minutes. When it was over, Steve sent a simple message to his commanders. Package delivered. Gift shop is open for business. Meanwhile, Captain Maria Santos was approaching the Zephyrian homeworld with a fleet of ships that looked like peaceful research vessels. For 3 years, she had been visiting Zephyrian space as part of a cultural exchange program, studying their music and art, while secretly scanning their planetary defenses. The Zephyrians had welcomed her with open arms, proud to show off their culture to the primitive humans who seemed so eager to learn. Maria's ships had been hiding their true nature behind holographic projectors and false identification signals. To any alien scanner, they looked like harmless science ships carrying researchers and cultural ambassadors. The Zephyrians had even given them special clearance to approach their homeworld without the usual security checks. As her fleet moved into orbit around the Zephyrian capital world, Maria activated the hidden systems that transformed her research vessels into warships. Weapons that had been disguised as scientific equipment suddenly revealed their true purpose. Shields that should not have been possible flickered to life around each ship. The Zephyrians had 30 seconds to realize what was happening, before their entire orbital defense network simply stopped working. Maria had not destroyed the Zephyrian defenses. She had taken control of them. For 3 years, her cultural exchange visits had included secretly placing control devices throughout their defense network. Every time she had admired a beautiful Zephyrian space station, or complimented their advanced technology, she had been installing backdoors that would let humans take over their systems whenever they wanted. The Zephyrian government received a simple message. Surrender now or watch your beautiful world burn. They chose surrender. Maria had conquered an entire star system without firing a single shot. On Earth, Director Paul Hayes was activating Project Mirror, a psychological warfare program that had been in development for over a century. For 300 years, the galaxy had known a carefully edited version of human history. They knew humans had once fought wars, but they thought those wars had been simple conflicts between primitive tribes. They knew humans could be violent, but they thought that violence was a thing of the past, something humans had outgrown when they reached the stars. Paul's broadcasts began reaching every corner of the galaxy simultaneously, transmitted through communication networks that aliens thought were secure, but which humans had been secretly accessing for decades. The first broadcast was a simple documentary about human military history, but not the sanitized version aliens had seen before. The aliens watched in growing horror as they learned the truth about the species they had been dismissing as primitive and weak. Humans had not just fought wars, they had perfected war. They had created weapons capable of destroying entire planets. They had fought conflicts that killed hundreds of millions of people. They had built empires that spanned continents and then torn them down and built new ones. Most terrifying of all, humans had done all of this before they ever left their home planet. The species that aliens thought was barely capable of space travel had actually been holding back for 3 centuries, choosing peace not because they were weak, but because they had already mastered every form of violence the galaxy could imagine. The second broadcast was even worse. It showed aliens the truth about human infiltration of their societies. The helpful maintenance worker who fixed their computers was actually a trained saboteur. The friendly cultural exchange student was actually an intelligence agent. The eager young researcher was actually mapping their defenses and looking for weaknesses. For 300 years, humans had been everywhere in alien space, watching and learning and preparing. Every alien government had human agents in positions where they could do maximum damage if activated. Every alien military base had humans who knew its weaknesses. Every alien homeworld had been studied and mapped by humans who pretended to be tourists or traders or scientists. The revelation that humans had been listening to alien communications for centuries sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. Every diplomatic meeting where aliens had discussed how to control or limit humanity had been monitored by human intelligence services. Every private conversation between alien leaders had been recorded and analyzed. Every military secret had been compromised. But the most terrifying revelation came when aliens began checking their own computer systems and found evidence of human access everywhere. Financial networks, communication systems, defense grids, transportation controls. Humans had been quietly gaining access to every system that kept alien civilization running. On Zentara Prime, Counselor Thrix was discovered in his quarters by his security team, sitting calmly at his desk while human agents stood guard outside his door. The same humans who had been serving as maintenance staff and diplomatic assistants for years were now politely informing him that his homeworld's defense grid was under new management. How? Thrix asked, his voice barely above a whisper. One of the humans, a woman who had been cleaning his office for 3 years, smiled politely. Sir, we tried to tell you for 300 years that we were not as weak as you thought. You chose not to listen. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. Alien leaders who had spent centuries looking down on humanity were discovering that humans had been in their homes, their offices, their most secure facilities all along. The species they had thought was primitive and harmless had been methodically preparing for this day since the moment they first reached the stars. The galaxy was learning what humans had known all along. The most dangerous predator is the one that chooses not to hunt until it decides the time is right. And after 300 years of patience, humanity had decided that time had finally come. The galaxy's true awakening came when alien intelligence services began investigating just how badly they had underestimated humanity. What they discovered in the following days would haunt alien nightmares for generations to come. Colonel Danny Baker led the team that revealed the first shocking truth to the Galactic Council. For decades, installations throughout the galaxy that aliens thought were simple human agricultural stations, mining operations, or research facilities had actually been military development centers. The humans who worked at these locations had been developing weapons and technologies that made current alien military equipment look like stone tools. Danny walked into the Galactic Council, chambers with a data pad full of information that would change everything aliens thought they knew about warfare. The council members who had been laughing at humanity just days before now sat in stunned silence as he calmly explained what humans had been building while pretending to struggle with basic alien technology. This facility on Rigel 7 that your inspectors classified as a grain processing plant, Danny said, showing images on the main display screen, has actually been developing energy weapons that can penetrate any known shield technology. The research station on Kepler 9 that you thought was studying plant growth has been working on cyber warfare systems that can take control of any alien computer network in seconds. The alien delegates watched in growing horror as Danny showed them facility after facility, each one hiding military research that was decades ahead of anything they possessed. Humans had not been struggling to understand alien technology. They had been studying it, improving it, and developing counters to it. Dr. Kelly Wright appeared on the screen from Earth, where she was revealing the crown jewel of human research to alien scientists who had spent centuries looking down on human intelligence. Kelly had been the public face of human scientific cooperation, working with alien researchers and sharing discoveries that everyone thought represented the peak of human achievement. None of them had suspected that she was actually running research programs that would have terrified them if they had known the truth. For the past 50 years, Kelly explained to the stunned alien scientists watching her broadcast, human researchers have been working on projects that your species consider impossible. We have developed faster-than-light communication that does not require the relay networks you depend on. We have created matter conversion systems that can turn asteroids into starships. And yes, we have built weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. The last statement sent shockwaves through the council chamber. Star-killer weapons were considered theoretical impossibilities by alien scientists. The energy requirements alone should have been beyond any known technology. Yet Kelly was calmly showing them test footage of human weapons that could cause stars to collapse into black holes, eliminating entire solar systems in seconds. Admiral Gary Thompson appeared next, speaking from the bridge of a ship that should not have existed. Behind him, alien delegates could see technology that looked like nothing they had ever encountered. The ship itself seemed to bend light around it, making it difficult to focus on directly. The human fleet you are looking at, Gary explained, consists of vessels built with technology developed during 3 centuries of what you called peaceful cooperation. Every time you shared your science with us, we learned from it and improved upon it. Every time you showed us your military equipment, we developed better versions. Every time you demonstrated your defensive systems, we created weapons that could defeat them. Gary's ships began demonstrating their capabilities for the terrified alien observers. Shields that made the ships completely invisible to alien sensors. Weapons that could strike targets through dimensional space, bypassing any known form of defense. And most terrifyingly, cyber warfare systems that could take control of alien vessels and turn them against their own fleets. The worst part, Gary continued, is that we could have conquered the galaxy decades ago. We chose not to because we believed in peace. We believed that if we were patient enough, reasonable enough, and helpful enough, you would eventually treat us as equals. We were wrong. Captain Nancy Davis broadcast from her archaeological ship, the Discovery, revealing perhaps the most chilling truth of all. Nancy had been exploring dead worlds throughout the galaxy, studying the ruins of ancient civilizations that had disappeared long before any current species reached the stars. What she had found in those ruins would haunt alien historians forever. Every major galactic civilization in recorded history, Nancy explained, has faced a species exactly like humanity at some point in their development. A species that appeared peaceful and cooperative, but possessed military capabilities far beyond what they revealed. Every single one of these civilizations made the same mistake you made. They assumed that patience meant weakness and cooperation meant submission. Nancy showed images from dozens of dead worlds, each one telling the same story. Ancient civilizations that had grown powerful and arrogant, treating other species as inferior until they pushed the wrong species too far. Archaeological evidence showed that these ancient empires had fallen not to barbarian invasions or natural disasters, but to species they had underestimated and dismissed. The galaxy has been through this cycle many times before, Nancy continued. A dominant civilization becomes convinced of its own superiority. It treats other species as pets or servants or obstacles to be managed. Eventually, it encounters a species that will not tolerate such treatment indefinitely. The dominant civilization falls, and the cycle begins again with new species. The psychological impact on alien populations was devastating. For centuries, they had believed they were the most advanced civilizations the galaxy had ever seen. They had thought their technology, their wisdom, and their military power made them natural rulers of the stars. Now they were learning that they were just the latest in a long line of species that had made the same arrogant assumptions and paid the same terrible price. Reports began flooding in from across the galaxy as aliens discovered the true extent of human infiltration and preparation. Every major alien government found that their most trusted advisors, their most reliable workers, and their closest allies included humans who had been reporting back to Earth for years. Financial systems that aliens thought were secure had been compromised decades ago. Military communications that were supposed to be unbreakable had been monitored from the beginning. The Dominion's High Command discovered that their most classified weapon development programs had been observed by human agents from the start. The Veltar found that their impregnable fortresses had been mapped down to the smallest detail by humans who had spent years pretending to be maintenance workers. The Zephyrians learned that their cultural pride had been exploited by human anthropologists, who used their welcome as cover for intelligence gathering. But perhaps the most terrifying revelation came when aliens began calculating the true scope of human military power. Based on the facilities and technologies that had been revealed, human military capabilities were not just superior to alien forces, they were superior by orders of magnitude. Humanity could have conquered the entire galaxy whenever they chose to do so. The question now, Gary Thompson concluded in his final broadcast to the Galactic Council, is not whether humanity can defeat your combined forces. We have already proven that we can. The question is whether you will accept the new reality peacefully, or whether you will force us to demonstrate just how thorough our preparations have been." The silence that followed his words was the sound of an entire galaxy realizing that everything they thought they knew about power, about warfare, and about their place in the universe had been wrong. They had spent 3 centuries believing they were the teachers and humanity was the student. Now they understood that humanity had been the teacher all along, and the lesson was finally over. The age of alien dominance had ended not with a bang, but with the quiet revelation that it had never really existed at all. The war ended on the 17th day, though calling it a war was generous. It had been more like a demonstration, a carefully orchestrated revelation of what humanity was truly capable of when they stopped choosing to be nice. Across the galaxy, alien resistance had not so much been defeated as it had simply evaporated once the true scope of human preparation became clear. Ambassador Kate Robinson walked into the rebuilt Galactic Council chambers with the confidence of someone representing the galaxy's new dominant power. The chamber itself had been redesigned during the brief conflict, with human engineers working around the clock to create a space that reflected the new reality. The humans now sat at the center of the chamber, in seats that were larger and more prominent than any others. The alien delegates sat in arranged circles around them, a visual reminder of who was now in charge. Kate had been Jake Morrison's assistant for 10 years before the revelation. She had watched him give the same patient speeches over and over again, asking for the same basic respect that never came. Now she stood where he had stood, but everything had changed. The aliens who had once laughed at human requests now listened in complete silence as she outlined the terms of the new galactic order. "Effective immediately," Kate announced, her voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. "Humanity will assume its rightful position as a senior member of the Galactic Council. All previous trade agreements that discriminated against human interest are hereby void. New agreements will be negotiated on terms of complete equality, with human representatives having final approval over any provisions that affect human worlds or citizens." The alien delegates said nothing. What could they say? In 17 days, humanity had demonstrated that they could have taken control of the galaxy at any point in the past century. The fact that they were offering negotiations instead of simply imposing their will was more mercy than many species would have shown. Furthermore, Kate continued, reparations will be paid to humanity for 3 centuries of systematic discrimination and economic exploitation. The amount and method of payment will be determined by human economists, and compliance will be monitored by human observers stationed throughout the galaxy. President Helen Carter addressed the galaxy from the Oval Office, her words broadcast simultaneously to every inhabited world in known space. Behind her stood the advisors and generals who had helped plan and execute the most successful military operation in galactic history, though most of the galaxy still did not fully understand that a military operation had even taken place. "My fellow beings," Helen began, using words that carried new meaning now that everyone understood humanity's true capabilities. For 300 years, humanity has sought its place among the stars through peaceful cooperation and patient diplomacy. We believed that if we proved our worth through service and sacrifice, we would eventually be accepted as equals by the species we encountered. Helen paused, looking directly into the camera with eyes that had seen too much history in too short a time. We were wrong. Our patience was mistaken for weakness. Our diplomacy was seen as submission. Our desire for peace was interpreted as inability to wage war. Today, that misunderstanding has been corrected. She gestured to the displays behind her, which showed human fleets maintaining peaceful but vigilant positions throughout the galaxy. Make no mistake, humanity did not seek this outcome. We would have preferred to continue our peaceful approach for another 300 years if necessary, but we will not allow our species to be subjugated, diminished, or treated as anything less than the equals we have always been. General Frank Lewis oversaw the establishment of human monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. These were not occupation forces in the traditional sense, but they served the same purpose. Every major trade route, every important space station, every alien homeworld now had a human presence that could respond immediately to any threat against human interests. The monitoring stations were staffed by volunteers from the Shadow Fleet and the intelligence services, people who had spent decades preparing for a war they hoped would never come. Now they found themselves responsible for maintaining a peace that had been won not through victory in battle, but through the demonstration of overwhelming preparedness. Frank visited each station personally, meeting with commanders who had given up normal lives to serve in humanity's secret military. "You are not conquerors," he told them at each stop. "You are peacekeepers. Your job is not to rule over alien species, but to ensure they never again mistake human patience for human weakness." Dr. Michelle Turner became the first director of the new Department of Interspecies Relations, a position that carried more real authority than most alien governments now possessed. Michelle had been a junior diplomat before the revelation, someone who believed deeply in the possibility of peaceful coexistence between species. She still believed in peace, but now she understood that peace required strength to maintain it. Michelle's first act was to establish the Tolerance Accords, a galactic treaty that formally recognized the right of any species to defend itself when pushed beyond reasonable limits. The accords included specific definitions of what constituted systematic discrimination, economic exploitation, and political subjugation. They also established clear procedures for addressing grievances before they escalated to the point where species felt compelled to take direct action. The goal, Michelle explained to the reformed Galactic Council, is to ensure that no species ever again finds itself in the position humanity was forced into. The accords guarantee that patience will be respected, that diplomacy will be taken seriously, and that no species will be punished for choosing peaceful solutions to conflicts. The accords were signed by every major government in the galaxy within a month. No one wanted to risk being on the wrong side of a species that had just demonstrated what happened when their tolerance finally ran out. Captain Pete Johnson, formerly Admiral of the Shadow Fleet, was appointed as the first human fleet commander, a position that made him responsible for maintaining galactic security. The Shadow Fleet was no longer secret, but it remained formidable. Ships that had been hidden in asteroid fields for decades now patrolled openly through space lanes, their presence a constant reminder of human military capabilities. Pete established new protocols for fleet operations that emphasized protection rather than aggression. "We are not here to threaten anyone," he told his commanders. "We are here to make sure that what happened to humanity never happens to any other species, and that what happened to the aliens never happens to us." The memorial erected on Zentara Prime became the most visited site in the galaxy. It was simple and elegant, consisting of a black stone wall with names engraved in every major galactic language. The names were not of the dead, but of the living. Every human who had suffered discrimination, every alien who had participated in the system that created the crisis, and every being on both sides who had worked to prevent it. The inscription at the bottom of the memorial was written in basic galactic standard, simple enough for any species to understand. Here ended the age when kindness was mistaken for weakness. Here began the age when strength chose to serve peace. In the years that followed, alien children learned about the 17 Days War in their history classes. They learned about the importance of respecting other species no matter how different or seemingly weak they might appear. They learned that the most dangerous predator is often the one that chooses not to hunt, and that patience is not the same as passivity. Most importantly, they learned that the galaxy was big enough for every species to find their place in it, as long as they remembered that finding that place required respecting the places that others had already claimed. Humanity had finally taken their seat at the galactic table, not as supplicants asking for scraps, but as equals demanding the respect they had always deserved. The galaxy would remember the moment humanity's tolerance snapped, and would spend the rest of their existence making sure it never needed to snap again.